Hello, hello.
Hi guys, I'm not sure what's the time zone, but it's good morning for me, but good evening for you guys, I think. How are you doing?
Very good.
Spectacular. This is so cool. Thank you so much for having us
Thank
and
you
for
so
putting this
much for being
together.
a part of this. Really, really appreciate the time that both of you have made to be a part of this summit. I am personally very, very honored to be moderating this panel. I think I have a lot to learn from you guys. So, yeah, leadership and building teams. Is it something you guys like talking about, or is it a topic that has been talked about too much in life? Anil, how about you? I think you just looking at your experience, yeah, makes me extremely scared.
Yeah, no, I think leadership and team building is a very important topic, and I think it's an important skill to understand and comprehend. But first, before we get started, I think a good morning to everybody from here in Singapore, and it's a pleasure to be here on the Global Game Changers Summit. So, and lovely to see the young people who will shape the future and to talk and share and discuss things about leadership, team building, etc. So, great to be here. And I think for me, Mathura, the whole idea of leadership is not something that you have a goal. It's something that you just learn and experience and evolve into, right? So this is
Yep.
about what your experiences are and how they shape you and how you get there. So every person who you would meet in your life, in your lifetime, would have a different journey to it and a different reason to be there. It's not that there is a set path and a steady route to get there. So there'll be lots of questions and experiences. So happy to talk about more of those.
Yep, agreed. I agree. It's not something that everyone sets out to do. I don't think anybody has like an ambition when they were a kid, like, I'm going to be a leader. Nobody says that, but it's something that you will have to eventually develop, no matter what role you take on in life. How about you, Golu? Is this an over topic talked about too much, or is it something you love talking about?
I think, well, first of all, thanks for having us, both of us here. This is an incredible event that you've put together, and I'm so excited to be part of this. I think the hard thing, if I think about when, I know maybe you and I, when we were younger, what the problem is that is a lot of ink wasted on leadership, and most of it's low quality. And the hardest part as a young person is figuring out which of all the advice do you actually do? Like,
Yep.
do you average all the advice together? Do you Google? Do you just go with the advice of the person who has the biggest company? And there's a pretty big dichotomy between people who have been successful because of market size, because of trends in their favor, versus people who have been able to build great, enduring cultures. And I think it's over time, as you get older and you have more experience, you figure out which parts of the reality around you are true and which parts are fictions that are created by successful people after the fact to justify and narrate their own success. That's the
Oh,
hardest
wow.
part.
I love that. I do agree. We do tend to justify when we look back, but like, so, did you guys have any certain perceptions with regards to leadership when you were younger, like when you were a student? I think most of our viewers here today are students, and when we are students, I personally was quite gullible. Like everything that's thrown at me, I'm going to believe it. What were the perceptions that you guys had about leadership when you were a student that kind of like got proven completely wrong as you began your journey of becoming a leader?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, Mathura, as you were saying, right, that as kids, we believe, as children, as students, we believe that the world is perfect in every aspect, right? And we look up to our leaders to expect to deliver on every count that you measure them on. So they should know everything. They should be able to deal with all kinds of problems and look at them as the absolute idea of everything that you think you don't know, they know, right? And this
Yep.
is probably one thing that as a kid I felt as I looked up to my teachers who I thought knew everything about a subject, realizing that they were also learning concurrently.
Yep.
I remember having a conversation with a teacher who gave me a problem to solve, and I did it a different way, and she marked it wrong. And she said, "This is not the way because this is not how I've taught you." So you keep learning all these things as you go along. That there are different ways to do things. Not that there's not just one way of doing things, or for that matter, how you experience when somebody treats you in a certain way. How do you react? How do you do things differently? So for me, as we have grown and evolved as adults, I mean into adulthood, the key things that I think that I have learned is that first thing that we talk very little about as kids is about the people aspect, and this is something that you are actually learning as you're growing, right? How to
Yep.
make friends, how to build networks, the idea of being able to connect to a larger group of people, the idea of going and saying hello to somebody and starting a million conversations or a million ideas coming out of that, right? I think these are things that you don't focus as much as you are when you're a kid or growing up, and you focus more on the absolute aspect of knowledge and learning something, doing something. And I've seen generally, Mathura, that children who are as they're growing up, I think the parts of life where they focus more on building friends, getting to know people, being able to reach out and explore new things, new hobbies, trying to experiment with newer ideas and new things. Somebody who is not into play, but gets into acting just for the sake of experiencing it. I think developing experiences, developing some good ideas as a uh, 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 exposure to ideas is something very helpful. And I think this is an underplayed skill as a child, as a kid, and there's more focus on academic excellence, especially where I come from. Bo might be able to add more, but academic excellence is being seen as an absolute measure of success. Whereas I think there's a lot more in those phases that we need to focus on as
I
we evolve.
completely agree. I completely agree. A lot. Even myself, I focused a lot more on the academics, maybe a little bit more on the extracurriculars, but rarely on skills of actually building connections, which is something I struggle with developing this new skill in a way. How about you, Balu?
Well, I think it depends on what you want to do for work, or what kind of impact you want to have on the world. So I think that in the old days, if you think 100 years ago, kind of all skills were equally valuable. But today, if you want to work at a quant hedge fund, you want to work at Susquehanna Jane Street, you probably have to be like one of the best at math in the world. Like if you didn't do Math Olympiad, or it's very hard to work there.
Yeah.
But you can also, there's many other businesses that are very, to Neil's point, relationship focused, right? They're, much of investment banking is relationship focused. And so you could just to pick an example. And so like figure out, I think one of the great pieces of advice I heard when I was young was hire for strength, not lack of weakness. And remember that you are hiring yourself for your own future, but you uniquely get to modify yourself for your own future. So figure out what your strengths are and just go to places where you can truly go all out on those strengths, as opposed to being that guy who's like, well, I'm not good at this thing, I'll plug in that hole. And I'm not good at that, I'll plug in that hole. And you're just like not good. That you're not world class at anything. And I think
Yeah.
it's worthwhile to be world class at least one thing.
Yeah. Agreed. I love that. I wish I had heard this when I was much younger as well, but I'm still young, so I'm gonna use this.
We're all so young, right? That's
Yes.
the thing. Like, you look at the founder of Zipcar was 50 something years old when she founded Zipcar. Like, much of entrepreneurship, even great, academic success, maybe outside
Yeah.
of the Fields Medal, but much of success in life comes much later than people think. And so, if you think you're kind of not young, well, you can still be young and still have an enormous impact on your future self.
Yeah, agreed. So I think we can dive in deeper into. So if you're someone who is not into the specialized math skills, I was actually speaking with my siblings that I am nowhere near the Harvard math majors, and we can't keep up with them. Some of us who are more towards dealing with people, and that's where we focus on. What are some of the things we should start developing in a way, or how can we start developing that skill as a student right now? Where should we get started? Maybe I can get Anil to share on this a little bit.
I think it's a question of what you're asking me is, as you are growing and you have certain skills, where do you start focusing on to build others? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I mean more towards dealing with people, and I think being a leader, I think developing teams and all of that.
Right.
How do we actually get started? Like, is it something I should have started thinking about when I was a kid running
Okay.
a society in my school, or is it something I should only think about when I'm going into work? Where does
No,
it
I
start?
think right, I get it. So I think this is something which is a skill that you can do anywhere and everywhere, right? Fundamentally, getting to know and meet people. I talk about in the earlier conversation that you're having about getting to know people, right? Getting the right on people. I think the important thing is you can build networks as a student. Your your friends around you. That's your network, right? As you start to go out, you join some clubs, or you join a Boy Scout group, as an example. That's where you are building networks that go outside of your normal zone. So I've seen a lot of students experiment with new ideas. So, when I was doing my engineering, I was a mechanical engineer, but I had friends who were interested in photography, and they were part of a photography club. And that's what got them exposed to a different aspect of doing something. So I think it's always about getting out of what you think. So as Bo was saying, right, there are the areas that you think are super strengths, and we are overtly focused as children mostly on what we can't do and what we don't do. First, be very clear about what you can do and do it very well. But at the same time, be open to new experiences, be open to meeting people outside of what you like, so that you get a broader view. There is nobody as a student who's growing would have an absolute view of what the world is. And I can tell you, when I was 15, 16, 17, I had no idea what I wanted to be. If somebody were to tell me today that, did you know what you were going to be, I had no idea. I was going to do engineering because I enjoyed science, but I didn't even know whether I was going to be a mechanical engineer or an electronics engineer or a civil engineer. So you just keep experimenting, learning, gauging, and then you start to zone. And the thing about students, and what I have enjoyed and what I've encouraged a lot of people to do, which I wish I had got that advice early on, was that it's okay to experiment. It's okay to figure out that you don't like something, and then move on. Decisions made in not knowing what you don't know, versus trying and realizing that you don't like it, are better quality. And I think that is where we fell. So I would say the emphasis on networks is very important, but remember, it is just about going out and meeting people. As a child, as a student, I was very scared to meet people. I was an introvert by nature, so it was very scary for me to go and talk to somebody senior in a company when I met them, or even my school, talking to my principal, talking to my dean. I was scared. I felt, today when I reflect back, I wish I could just go up to them and say hello and just have a conversation on a subject that I wanted to have. And they would have shared a lot more, and they would have taught me a lot more. So I think those are the pieces that I would focus on. So go out, talk, meet. And if you feel that you're not able to say, and you think that's a hesitation, just say hello, and you will see that your network builds. You get to know and learn more about people. And that's the start of the knowledge and experience journey and the networking journey for me.
Amazing. I agree. We should put ourselves out there and experiment and do something new. I have something that personally bugs me sometimes when it comes to networking, which is my generation, the Gen Ys. We get very excited with regards to networking. Like when I was in my college, everyone's like, "Yes, let's go for the event. I'm just gonna meet and shake my hands with everybody there, and I'm gonna add them on LinkedIn, and that's my networking." Is that how we should be looking at it? Because like I see a lot of people, especially with tools like LinkedIn right now, they're just adding everybody and following everybody and connecting with everybody. What do you feel is lacking with regards to the younger generation, with regards to how they make the connection and how they actually do the networking? Bolu, do you have anything to add on
I'm
that?
actually curious. I'll say what I think, but I'm curious if we may agree or have slightly different perspectives here. I think when you are networking, it's certainly you're meeting people, but actually the thing you're doing is you're practicing a skill. Think about what's the actual goal, right? If you think networking is basketball,
Yep.
and you're going to get better at basketball by going to the gym and being better at basketball, you're not going to get any better at basketball. You need to be like, I need to practice my left-hand side fadeaway jumper from 18 feet. And I'm just going to keep practicing my left-hand side fadeaway jumper from 18 feet, right?
Yep.
And for that, for example, like you can walk into a social situation like, is your goal to have somebody like you? Is your goal to have somebody make an introduction to somebody else that might help you in your journey? Is your goal to have them follow you? Like figure out what your goal is.
Yep.
Figure out if you're doing a left-hand side, 18-foot fadeaway jumper, and then get reps doing that. And the second half of that is self-awareness. We all know people who are not well liked. They think they're good networkers, but they're not because nobody likes them, right? But if you ask them, hey, do you know that most people don't like you? Well, first of all, people don't do that. But if you did, they'd be like, I think they'd be shocked, right? So this lack of self-awareness is a huge problem. So how do you get across self-awareness? You actually can ask people. You're like, hey, how was that? I'm trying to get better at meeting people. How was that? And people will give you real feedback if you're authentic and ask for the feedback, because most people are too afraid to ask. So I
Yeah.
think we can be one of those people that's not too afraid to ask. So I mean, that's my view of it. What do you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I would even add a few components to what you were just saying. Well, I think the emphasis these days is on quantity. I mean, with the access and LinkedIn, the social media platforms, the emphasis, people should not evaluate their success on networking by the number of people they know, but they should evaluate the success by how many they know well, and they are able to relate to. So I come from the soft side of knowing people, right? For me, I still believe in the real world, getting out in front of people, shaking hands, and that's not the way to get to know people these days. I mean, these days people make good relationships even in a virtual world. But the thing is, don't value quantity more than quality and get to know people better, because this is a skill. What makes somebody tick, right? What is it that is important to him or her? Being interested in that person is going to be an important area of understanding how to build that relationship. So I come at it from the point of view, just to add to what Bo was saying, is that quantity versus quality. Quality is important. Focus on understanding the person, understanding what makes him or her tick, understand what could be their strengths as much as their gaps, and how they could complement you. But the most important thing is build trust. Trust is very important. You could be meeting 100 people, but you could be knocking them over by coming by basically being seen as somebody. If you're perceived as somebody who cannot be trusted and who's not open and transparent in a relationship or your connect that you're trying to build, it will be counterproductive. So I am a believer in do less but be more effective, and give trust if you want trust, and that's how networks will be built in a sustainable way.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, I like the point that building trust was brought up. I think leadership and building trust is something that goes hand in hand. It's extremely important to be able to do that. So how do you guys think? What is your way of building trust? Because I've seen leaders who are like so friendly with their team. They are almost like always there with them, making jokes, and they are that type of leaders. I've also seen leaders who are far away, but the team have so much of respect and they still get things done. There's so many different styles of leadership. So what works for you guys, and in your personal experience, how have you been able to kind of build trust with your teams? And Anil, you want to take that first?
Sure, sure. I think for me, it's first thing about building trust is you need to able to give. I have heard a lot of people talk about you need to earn my trust. It's almost like it's something that I preserve and I value a lot, and I will not give it to you. My view on building relationships is you start by giving trust, and you see if there is an evidence of somebody not stacking up to it. So that is probably one piece that I've learned. And how do you show that you trust somebody is being committed to their development, being committed to their success, and that is important. Now I'm talking about in a business environment, not in a general, because there are multiple facets in the conversation of trust, right? It could be in personal relationships, it could be in professional engagement, etc. So in a work environment, for me, what I do to basically ensure that I can relate to the people and they can relate to me, one thing that is important is transparency. Talk, communicate, share where you're going, what you're thinking, how you want to get done, so people can know the behind you, who is there, right? I mean, you can have a brilliant strategy in your mind, but if you're not talking to your team about what it is, then it's not going to help. So being transparent, being able to talk about what you want to do, etc., is important. The second thing which generates trust for me is when you are yourself and you're not trying to be a superhero, right? A lot of us have this feeling that if I expose my weakness, or if I expose an area that I'm not very good at, it might not be good. I think for me, I have seen that developing trust also starts by acknowledging your own areas that you would like to focus, and you're open to get feedback and get knowledge. One concept that has become more prevalent these days that wasn't there when I started working was reverse coaching or reverse mentoring. This is I find this concept this such a brilliant one, because here you are sitting amongst somebody who is probably 20 years younger to you, but you are a student of their experience. You're asking them questions. They're able to tell you what they think is working, not working, and they can have an open conversation. And in that equation, you are the receiver of feedback, and you're how you react to it, how you deal with it, is what the mentor or the coach is watching. But imagine he's 20 years, 25 years younger to you. He's just starting to work, whereas you think you're at the other end of the professional span. So it would be, to me, about feedback, transparency, communication. And if you make a mistake, and this is an important thing for me, if you make a mistake, be acknowledge it. That is, you are as human as the person next to you. You are not absolute. And this makes people believe and see what's happening. And last, I think a subject that we can explore further, if you want, is the development, right? How do you develop your team so that they see that you're committed to their long-term success?
Definitely something I would like to explore more as we go on. Bolu, anything to add on with regards to building trust in terms of your teams?
My view on building trust, assuming you're a good person who tells the truth and is an ethical person, let's put that to the side, is actually only one sentence, which is, do what you said you would. That's it. Like,
Yep.
literally, that's it. I mean, I can talk a lot longer, but that's actually just it. If you make a promise, whether it's I'm going to introduce you, I'm going to get this document to you, I'm going to change your compensation later on if you're able to hit these skills, if I'm going to promote you, I mean, whatever you write, you say, write that down and hold yourself incredibly accountable. And that's kind of it.
Okay.
And I think Anil's mental model is really good. And I think we should do all of those things. But but for me, the fundamental thing is, like, if you do what you say you will do, people will trust you. Now, that's not sufficient. I think you should do more. You should do what Anil's saying about reverse mentorship and coaching people and growing their careers. All of that will improve how you're perceived. But the fundamental layer of trust is all you have to do is do what you said you would.
Yep. And I think that's absolutely important for anyone, any young person to kind of implement, which I personally have seen lacks among the people that I deal with at times. Speaking, since Anil brought up development of the team, and I actually wanted to explore more of that, because in a small organization, like for example, I'm running a outsource accounting business, so I have very few members in the team. So looking into developing the business means I really need to look into each of their personal developments, even simple things like they're sitting for their exams and they're not getting through, so coaching them through that, all the way to making sure they are developing their career in the right way. So when you have a smaller team, for me, it's comprehensible to be able to do that level of depth in terms of their personal development. But if you are leading such a large organization, or a robust organization like Clipboard Health is growing so fast, are you able to give the same amount of commitment with regards to individual personal development, or how do you guys view it with regards to your teams? Bolu, do you want to take that first? Yep.
I think first you have to believe that scalable solutions are just as good as one-on-one solutions. Because if you don't believe that, then you can only run small teams for the rest of your life. Because then you're, by definition, trading off a lower quality experience for the larger team that you run. So Clipboard Health is about 900 people right now in about 40 countries. And so everything we do, we try to do in the open on Slack or on Confluence or Google Docs, wherever we do. So everybody in the company can read every document. So that's to Anil's point, transparency part. But then now you're just awash in this like stream of documents and you don't know what to read. And so then it's on each of the leaders, including me, to construct a program that brings newbies into the Clipboard way of doing things, brings new managers, people who have not managed at Clipboard before, into the Clipboard management infrastructure, bring folks who haven't worked on strategy to the strategy infrastructure. And each of those are essentially programs that you construct that said, hey, there's a stream of documents over here that the finance team produces where we do forward-looking planning and modeling, forward revenues, forward OPEX. Go look at that. And here's a stream of management output from the support and ops team. Go look at that. And after you've looked at these 4 or 5 streams, here are the questions we think you should ask yourself as a starting point. But most of the learning happens from you asking yourself those questions and then working with your manager on those answers. And the final thing that we do, which I think is weird and maybe crazy, is that we grade every piece of work. Because, you know, like most people think when their work, oh, if I'm going to get a grade, it's a bad grade. Or if it's a particularly good grade. I don't usually get grades. It's like hard to figure out how I'm doing. But at school, you're used to getting grades. So just give grades. And so, you know, if you're a product manager putting together a spec, we'll be like, hey, this is like a 6 out of 10. And here are the reasons why. And sometimes you'll do it again. You're like, oh, now it's an 8 out of 10. Amazing. But if you give a precise grade, that's how you can actually get grades. Imagine going through all of K through 12 school, never getting grades. The way we work in business, we're like, oh, pretty good. Yeah, pretty good math test. It's like, how would you learn anything, right? And so we push for the extremes. That's our view.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely a concept that I've not heard of. I might experiment with it. I'm going to go into that a bit more later, but I'm going to hear from Anil first. Anil, how do you view, I think, personal development of your team?
I think development, I love what Bo said, by the way. I think this is very interesting. And as I said, there's always new perspectives and fresh perspectives on things. I think that's brilliant how Bo framed it. But some components that I would add to that that are important to me is, so the first thing is ensuring, as you, among other things, is also allowing people and the teams to experiment and try new things. And this is an area. So take, for example, you have somebody who joins you in product management, right? And you come on board in product management and you do this for 2 or 3 or 4 years, but you know, you could help that individual or that person be much better and smarter if you gave them an opportunity to, say, work with a supply chain element of the organization. That would give them insights on what is it that is important from the back end portion of the company. So supply chain means, how do you buy raw material, where do you buy it from, the decisions that are involved in putting a product together before you start to sell the product, right? And it makes a product manager better. So I think the element would be giving them, helping your teams to get more experience and more exposure. And the play out for that for this group would be, as you are looking at entering into a company, or as you start to work in the coming years, if you are in one space, it's okay to talk to somebody who's your supervisor or your manager to want to get a wider view of why things happen. And I've seen that as an important element. The second piece that I would say on the grading part, which Bo said, just to complement that, I think we are overtly focused on the gaps of a person. I think this is a human nature. We always want to talk about what we can't do well. And I think Bo said that at the very start, amplify the strengths. And this is very helpful in when you want to get your team to constructively think about themselves. The ground rule that I have, friends, is if you want to give somebody feedback on something that you think they could improve, you must start by giving them 2 things at least that are strengths that are unique to them, because every individual brings strengths and gaps to the table. And that's another element in the development planning that I emphasize within the organization and the team, is make sure that you focus on the strengths of the person before you go into the development areas of that person. I think those are 2 more elements I would add. And the scalability of the organization, I think it's truly about, you know, imagine I have 5,000 people that work in the region. I could not talk to 5,000 people, but it's about ensuring that my team, I behave with them in a manner that is representative of how I think their development plans should be. So everything that I need to do, which is right for them, is being done, because that's how they will translate this down in the organization. This is how they will ensure. So it doesn't start. It's not a hairy fairy concept. This is how you behave and how you focus. That will be a reality for the team that works for me. And when they see that that is being rewarded and that is being recognized, they will ensure that it goes down. And that's to the element of being able to scale up the processes, the structures, the values of the organization.
Yep. I mean,
as
someone, yes, please.
I was just going to say that, Anil, I think you said something precisely correct, at least in my view, which is people always ask what is culture, and culture is exactly what you just said. Culture is no more and no less than what is perceived to be rewarded and punished in an organization. That's it. And so when you reward particular things or you punish particular things and other people see it, that creates the culture that you're in. And so I see you doing that already. It's super cool.
Wow. Yes, agree with that. So like in terms of scalability, I'm more enjoying talking about this. For someone who is an entrepreneur and they do have a small team, like for now, like they're listening to this conversation and they want to go like, okay, I want to make this happen. Especially Bolu, you were saying things like the documents and Slack and all those kind of stuff. It may not be something that is something that they can comprehend right now, just listening to it. So what can they do to bridge that gap? I think there's so many things where there are the small and medium sized business owners who they know that the way to scale is you need to do certain things in this area, but it's hard for them to make that bridge and they kind of cross that bridge because they cannot comprehend how would it look like and all of that because they may not have that experience. So what can be done to kind of bridge that gap?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think actually I love YouTube. I love YouTube. I love the internet because it allows us to learn from the best at each craft, whether it's like particle physics or how to cook or things like that. But so I think the resources are out there. I think
Yep.
the number one skill I wish I could give everyone is to expect as much out of their team as they expect of themselves. I think it's the fundamental mistake of most leaders and most entrepreneurs, which is somehow they've convinced themselves it's okay. Nobody's ever going to be as good as me. I'm always going to have to do all the hardest things because I'm the owner, because I'm the founder. But actually, that's not true. That means, A, you think everybody else in the world is dumber than you, which is probably not true, or you can't attract anybody as good as you, which suck, right? So both of those would suck. And so
Yep.
just don't do that. And I think you can get incredible team dynamics and incredible work done if you just stop thinking that you have to be the best. That's why.
Very nice, very nice. Just changing the shift in perspective. Anil, anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I think what he said is absolutely important. Faith in people, and just remember that there are good and smart people out there. All you need to do is give them the right tools, and they will make it happen. This is the underlying truth. It's about empowerment, it's about enablement, and it's about giving that confidence. So to me, that's scalability. And if you would how you would behave with an error and a mistake that you do yourself, you should be as compassionate as you are with yourself. You should be with your team. This is important. So collectively, especially in a startup setup, I have a very young business in my team that has probably just got 3 people working on it, and it's a business that I believe is going to be a very large business in the coming time, right?
Yeah.
And these 3 people end up doing a lot, and I can see that there is, for them to be able to scale, there is a huge amount of effort that they need to put in looking at every aspect of what they do, right? And the emphasis for me is to recognize that they are not going to be able to do all the elements that are required, being able to work with them to help them focus on some very specific things that will be critical for them to hit and deliver, and then get the confidence to go to the next step. So when it comes to scaling talent and scaling people, be fair to them, but at the same time be prepared to give them the right resources so that they can work with it. And I think align on very small, when I say it's not small, meaning expectation, but clear milestone, so that people can work towards a milestone, and that milestone movement will be give them a boost in terms of their success and confidence. But at the same time, will keep them focused on what they need to do, because you don't want to boil the ocean with them. So if I want to get a first real customer, I want to get an alpha prototype of a product in front of my customer, I then want the team to be focused on developing the alpha product and getting everybody to make sure that they can deliver it, rather than come to me with a business model and everything that's going to happen in the future, supply chain and costings and multiple things. So that's
Yeah.
how I think you build confidence, capability, and scalability. Many steps, many steps.
Yeah. I think many of us tend to overcomplicate it and really see the bigger picture when you need to be focusing on that one thing at a time.
Right.
Love that. So the other thing that I wanted to explore with regards to building teams is actually hiring, because I think it's something people view very differently. Does hiring make the team, like if you hire all the right people and that's how you get the best team that you can create, or is it how you lead and that's how kind of determines the team? How do you guys weigh on this?
I think building teams is probably the way I think about it. So the whole piece for me about building teams is is about ensuring that you're collectively working towards, let me phrase this differently. It's about getting the right kind of people with you, but before that, it's also understanding your own strengths and your own areas that you feel that you might not be fully comfortable with. uh, Take an example for myself as a case in point. I think I have a far astute mind towards analytics and a deeper questioning, but I sometimes miss the broad thinking, right? The big picture thinking. Now, I'm a leader, and people would expect me to have everything right, but I sometimes get lost in the weeds in the analysis, and that I've seen can be paralyzing my team. So I ensure that what is it that I need as a complementary fit to that, right? So I have got a strategist partner who basically helps me to always pull back and look at the big picture on what we're trying to do and how it's coming through, right? So I have a strategist who complements me, and there are leaders that I've seen who are very big with ideas and who love to have 100 ideas, and every time you talk to them, they will give you a new idea, but then they struggle to execute to it, right? And that's when you would build a team that has the execution capability, that has the analysis, the putting together of the business plan, putting together the whether you need a product manager, whether you need a supply chain leader, whether you need a logistics person and the right kind of people, or you need a customer success person or a sales leader or business development. I think there are multiple pieces. So the first thing starts from understanding what the deliverables are, and the next thing is understanding strengths and gaps and bring them on board. Coming to the idea of building teams across the region and across multiple aspects of business, there it's about uh, giving trust and confidence to your leaders. So we have leaders in different countries that are running their own businesses, and it's sometimes you want to be involved in everything that's happening in a business because you're curious to know. And as I said, I'm a very analysis oriented guy. I need to go into the details and everything, but I can't do that. I can't do that for 16 countries across this region and be in the weeds and everything. So I have to give trust to my leaders in those countries and help them to understand their own strengths and development areas, so that as they build their teams, they're able to dial up certain specific aspects. What does it mean for all of us on this call, in my view, would be that first, as you get into a team, or as you're getting into a part of a team, it's important to understand what's your role in that team. Be very clear, be very specific, and to the point which Bo said about building trust, be clear what you are expected to do and make sure that you make it happen and deliver to it. That is an important part of being successful as a team. But at the same time, have uh, uh, understand that collectively what do you do well and what others do better, and be able to build and pull people in who you think are better at something, or if you don't understand an area of what of why something needs to happen. So as I talked about, manufacturing person, a person who runs a factory, he doesn't understand why I need to carry 2 weeks of raw material in my factory in one place and I need to carry a month of raw material in another factory. Understand, ask the why. It may be because supply chains, material coming from China might take 3 months for reaching India, but it might only take 6 weeks for reaching Malaysia. And then you need to plan, and there might be port strikes and etc. People will build models and they will help understand. So understand what you do well and ensure you deliver, but at the same time, things you don't understand or you don't feel comfortable, ask about that. That will develop you, but more importantly, us as a part of the team will basically improve the competence and the development of the team. And from a leadership perspective, I think that is important for us to ensure exactly the same, looking down. So
No, I love that. Understand what's your role and deliver on that. Um, that seems to be like the theme of today's session. Bolu, anything else to add on with regards to hiring and building teams?
I think I have two things maybe that hopefully are useful to the group. This group. Number one is I strongly believe teams are hired, not empowered. So I think Anil said something earlier, which is there are smart people everywhere, and I 100% agree with that. But that doesn't mean there are smart people here, right? Not everybody is the right person for your team, so you have to hire. And it's like, think about sports, right? If you have Michael Jordan on your team, you're probably going to win a lot more. If you don't have Michael Jordan, if you have me and my friends who are all short, you're going to lose a lot of basketball games. But somehow we've convinced ourselves in business that you can make anybody good if you empower them and you coach them. That's just not true. No amount of empowering or coaching is going to make me beat Michael Jordan. That's just not possible. So pick very carefully the people that you have on your team, and don't believe this random, like, anybody can do anything. It's just not true. But that's fine, because people can do different things, but it's not true that anybody can do anything. And then I think the second thing is, whenever I ask someone for advice, I think about the story of kimchi when I was a kid. So I love kimchi, right? And if you're going to make kimchi and you ask somebody for advice, how do you make kimchi? There's three kinds of advice. They can give you some generic hand wavy, here's important to go get the right vegetables, fresh vegetables, keep your pots and jars clean, whatever. That's useful. The second most useful is they give you a very specific recipe that says this many tablespoons of salt, this many tablespoons of sugar. And the third one is they give you the actual kimchi sauce. And they say, here's some from my kitchen. Here will get you started. You'll eventually figure out how to make it. You'll tune it to your own self, right? And so here, I try to be that friend that gave me the kimchi instead of gave me some, like, make sure it's clean, like, whatever, sure, right? And so in terms of hiring, the best I can do is, here are my two favorite interview questions. Now, they might be wrong, but these are my two. The first one is, what do you wish you could go back in time and tell your past self? Like, what was the most important mistake of omission or commission that you made 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago? And what would you go back in time and tell yourself? That actually is not the interview question. That's just a setup. Once the candidates answered that, then you ask the second part of the interview question, which is, okay, what do you think future you would want to tell current you? What mistake are you currently making? And that forces people out of their frame to think about, okay, if past me made a mistake, then current me is probably making some mistake. What is it? And to search for it. And the second one is, if you could make any change at work, what would you make? What was the one thing that you should be doing that you're not doing? That also is not the question. That's the setup for the question. The second part of the question is, okay, great, why aren't you doing that? Yep. And the great thing is that both interview questions are actually useful for hiring your team members, but they're useful most importantly for yourself. Ask yourself this question. What is the most important thing that you could be doing at work that you're not? Then after you've answered that question, be like, hey, why am I not doing that? Right? And ask yourself, okay, what do I wish past me, what advice do I have for the past me? Oh, holy cow, what advice I think I probably need right now that future me would give me? They're kind of interview questions for yourself, but they're also great interview questions for you. So that's the best I can do. I give you the recipe for the kimchi. I can't reach through the screen and give you the kimchi, but that's the best I can do.
I'm taking that down already. So I'm definitely gonna give it a try with this. Oh my God. Okay, we are coming towards the end of the time. I would love to go deeper into all of these topics, but we do not have enough time, unfortunately. Maybe we'll have another panel session in the future to dive deeper into these topics. Before we end our panel, one key takeaway, something that you want the audience to live with, the kimchi for today's session, in a way, that you'd like the audience to take away. Anil, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think, yes. The one important thing for me is that, journey to be successful is not about what you will be at the end of it. I think the more important thing is to be clear in your mind, what is it that you want to do next? The here and now, what will make you feel good about what's happening, whether this is a leadership goal, whether that is an academic goal, whether this is a personal goal. You must be looking at here and now and ensuring that you deliver what you want in the future to yourself truly now. So you want to be successful in the present, in the future, you want to be a good leader, but here is what it means to me today. I want to be doing 1, 2, 3 things today that will make me good here and now context as I look into the future. So that's probably one important piece I've always been focusing on. What can I do today which gets me to my long-term goal in a here and now mindset?
Yeah, I think it connects also to what Bolu was mentioning about from the future. If you're looking back, what's the mistake you're making now? Correct that now. Bolu, anything to add on as we end our session today?
I think mine's very similar, which is be your own board member. And in so doing, ask yourself all the hardest questions, because the best mentor you're ever going to get in your entire life is yourself. You know the context, you know all the problems, you know all the goals. And so, for example, one thing that we do as a leadership team every week is we ask each other, what is the number one biggest goal you have that you haven't met? And then what is your craziest idea for doing it? And why are we doing it?
Okay.
So.
I'm gonna test that out. So yeah, I just have to say thank you so much, guys. I had a blast moderating this panel. I would love to continue learning from you guys in the future. Really appreciate the time you guys have given us at this summit, and I think tune in for the rest of the summit as well. Thank you so much.
Excited. Thank you so much for having us again.
Thank you, Mathura. It was a pleasure to be here, and we really enjoyed the conversation and hearing both you and Bo.
Thank you so much. And I guess we will be passing it back to the MCs, which includes me, of course. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us, and I'll see you guys in literally a few more seconds. Bye-bye.